He could buy the building, silence the room, and erase anyone who stood in his way. But on his 36th birthday, a single mother told him no. And for the first time in his life, he chose to wait. I was refused a table on my own birthday, and for the first time in 36 years, nobody moved when I walked in. The rain was tapping against the tall glass windows of Lawrence like it had all night, soft but relentless, streaking the city lights into blurred gold and red. My driver held the door open, and the hostess looked up with the same polite smile they all wear until they recognize me. Only this time, she didn't. "Good evening, sir. Do you have a reservation?" "I don't make reservations. Restaurants usually make room." "Ethan Blackwood," I said, not raising my voice. "I never have to." She typed something into her tablet, frowned slightly, then gave me a small, apologetic shake of her head. "I'm sorry, Mr. Blackwood. We're fully booked tonight." Behind me, I felt the subtle shift in posture from the two men who always stand a few feet back. They were waiting for a signal. One nod and the manager would appear, a table would materialize, and someone else's anniversary would quietly disappear. That's how the city works. That's how I've always worked. But before anything could happen, another voice cut in. "Calm. Steady. It's true. We're at capacity." I turned. She wasn't dressed like the others in black cocktail dresses and polished smiles. She wore a simple navy blouse, sleeves rolled to her elbows, dark hair pulled back in a low ponytail. No fear in her eyes. Just focus. "I'm Claire," she said, meeting my gaze like I was just another man standing in the rain. "I manage the floor tonight." "Manage. Not own. Not serve. Manage." I studied her face, waiting for recognition to flicker. It didn't. "Do you know who I am?" The question wasn't anger. It was habit, a test I've never failed. "I know you don't have a reservation," she replied evenly. Somewhere behind me, a glass clinked too loudly. Conversation slowed. People were listening without looking like they were listening. I felt something unfamiliar then. Not embarrassment. Not exactly. Just resistance. "We have a family celebrating their 30th anniversary at the last table," she continued. "They booked it 3 months ago. I won't take that from them. Most people would have folded right there. Offered the private room. Cleared out a corner. But she stood still. Shoulders relaxed. Chin lifted just enough. "Money doesn't rewrite promises," she added, softer now. Promises. The word hit somewhere deeper than it should have. My mother used to say that. Before birthdays stopped meaning cake and started meaning quiet phone calls and empty rooms. I glanced past Claire and noticed a small boy sitting at a side booth near the hostess stand, coloring in a paper menu with green crayon. He couldn't have been more than 6. He looked up at Claire like she was the only stable thing in the room. "That your son?" I asked. Her expression shifted, protective but not defensive. "Yes. His name's Noah." The boy waved at me like I was harmless. No calculation. No caution. Just a kid who didn't know the weight of a last name. "He thinks keeping your word matters," Claire said. I tried to prove him right. The men behind me were waiting. The manager had appeared from nowhere, already sweating. I could fix this in 10 seconds. I've built an empire on 10-second decisions. Instead, I slipped my hands into the pockets of my coat and stepped back. "Then I'll wait," I said. A murmur moved through the dining room, like wind through dry leaves. Claire blinked once, surprised. "It could be an hour. I've got time. 36 years of it." She studied me carefully now, as if recalculating. Not afraid. Curious. Outside, the rain kept falling. Inside, for the first time in a long time, I wasn't the most powerful person in the room. And strangely, I didn't hate it. Waiting is a strange thing when you are used to being waited on. I chose a spot near the bar, far enough from the entrance that I was no longer blocking traffic, close enough that I could see Claire move between tables with quiet authority. She did not rush. She did not glance at me every few seconds to check whether I had changed my mind. She simply worked. The anniversary couple at the center table laughed over a slice of chocolate cake, a silver number 30 candle flickering between them. The man reached across the table and wiped frosting from his wife's cheek, and for a moment the entire restaurant felt warmer than the rain outside. My phone vibrated in my pocket. 3 missed calls. 2 messages from associates asking where the celebration was being held. I typed a short reply. "Running late. Do not wait up." It was the closest thing to honesty I could offer. Noah slid off his booth and wandered toward me, still clutching the green crayon. He stopped a few feet away, studying me with the bold curiosity only children have. Are you famous? He asked. Claire's head snapped up from across the room. Noah. Her tone carried warning, but not embarrassment. I found myself almost smiling. Not the kind you would recognize, I said. He considered that. It is my mom's rule that if you forget to call ahead, you have to deal with it. He continued matter-of-factly. Rules make things fair. Fair. Another word that does not often apply to my world. Your mom seems very sure of her rules, I replied. She keeps them even when it is hard, he said. Claire approached then, crouching beside him. Back to your seat, buddy. Her hand rested lightly on his shoulder, grounding him. She looked at me, not apologetic, just measured. He talks to everyone. He is honest, I said. That is rare. She held my gaze for a second longer than necessary, as if deciding whether that statement carried weight or threat. It is almost 9, she said finally. The table should open soon. I checked my watch. 9:03. I had been there nearly 40 minutes. In any other circumstance, someone would have lost their job by now. Instead, I felt something I could not quite name. Not patience. Something closer to clarity. The anniversary couple stood, hugging Claire before they left. The woman whispered something into her ear that made Claire's eyes soften. She walked them to the door personally, thanking them for coming as if they had done her a favor by keeping their reservation. When she returned, she gestured toward the table. It is yours now, if you still want it. If I still want it. The choice was offered back to me. I stepped forward, but before I could sit, the front doors opened sharply, letting in a rush of cold air and a cluster of loud voices. 3 men in tailored jackets, already irritated, scanned the room with restless energy. One of them recognized me. Instantly, I saw it in the way his posture changed. He nudged the man beside him and whispered something that made all 3 glance in my direction. Claire noticed the shift as well. Her shoulders straightened. She did not move behind me. She moved slightly in front of Noah instead. Protective. Calculated. The men approached, smiles stretched too wide. Mr. Blackwood. One of them said brightly, as if we were old friends. Did not expect to see you waiting. The word carried a subtle edge. I felt the room tighten again, tension threading through conversations. Claire stepped closer to the table. Gentlemen, if you do not have a reservation, I can add you to the list, she said calmly. She had no idea what currents she was standing in the middle of. Or maybe she did. And she simply refused to step aside. For the first time in years, I found myself hoping the evening would stay ordinary. The man who spoke my name did not lower his voice, and that was the point. He wanted the room to hear it, to measure my reaction. I held his gaze without standing. Good evening, Daniel, I said evenly. The other 2 shifted beside him, pretending to admire the wine list displayed near the host's stand. They were dressed for attention, loud cologne and sharper smiles, but their eyes kept flicking to Claire as if calculating how much she understood. Claire did not look impressed. Gentlemen, I can take your names for the wait list, she repeated. Current wait time is about 1 hour and 15 minutes. 1 hour and 15 minutes. Daniel let out a soft laugh. You expect us to stand around that long? That depends, Claire replied, folding her hands lightly in front of her. Do you have a reservation? The exchange was simple. Clean. In my world, conversations are rarely clean. I rose slowly from my chair, not to intimidate, but to shift the gravity of the moment. They are with me, I said. It was not entirely true. It was also not entirely false. Daniel's brows lifted in faint surprise. He had expected distance. Instead, I offered proximity. Claire looked between us, reading something unspoken. Then you are welcome to join Mr. Blackwood when his table is ready, she said. 1 table. For seats. No special treatment. No sudden rearranging of the floor plan. Just policy applied. Evenly. Daniel's smile tightened. You always this strict? He asked her, tone light but edged. Only about promises, she answered. There it was again. That word threading through the night like a quiet challenge. Noah had drifted closer without any of us noticing. He stood beside Claire, his small hand wrapped around her fingers. I saw Daniel glance down at him, then back at me, as if to ask whether this was truly the stage I intended to stand on. I stepped fully toward the table that had just been cleared. We will take it, I said calmly. And we will follow the house rules. Silence pressed in for half a breath. Then Daniel shrugged. Your birthday, your call. The statement landed softly, but it was not lost on Claire. Her eyes flicked to me. "It is your birthday?" she asked, almost reluctantly, as if personal details were not part of the transaction. "Apparently," I said. 36. Noah's face brightened. "Did you get cake?" he asked. I glanced at the empty table, the folded napkins, the polished silverware reflecting the warm light overhead. "Not yet." Claire hesitated, then nodded once. "We can fix that." She guided Noah back toward his booth and spoke quietly to one of the servers. I caught fragments. "Small plate. Candle. Keep it simple." Daniel watched the exchange with open curiosity now. "You are really staying?" he murmured to me. "For cake." "For the rules," I replied. He studied me as if reassessing a strategy. Around us, the restaurant slowly exhaled. Conversations resumed. Glasses clinked. The rain outside softened to a mist against the windows. When Claire returned, she carried a modest slice of chocolate cake on a white plate, a single candle flickering at its center. No sparklers. No dramatic presentation. Just quiet light. She placed it in front of me without ceremony. "Happy birthday, Mr. Blackwood," she said. Not fearful, not flattering, simply sincere. The flame reflected in her eyes for a second, and I felt something unfamiliar settle in my chest. Not power, not control, something steadier. "Make a wish," Noah called from his seat. I looked at the candle, at the small circle of light in a room that had almost turned into something else entirely. Then I leaned forward and blew it out. The smoke from the candle curled upward for a second before disappearing into the warm air above. The table and the room seemed to relax with it. Noah clapped once, proud as if he had orchestrated the entire moment. Daniel gave a slow nod, half amused, half contemplative, then slid into the chair across from me without another word. The other two followed, their earlier edge softened by the ordinary ritual of cake and quiet applause from a nearby table that had overheard. Claire stepped back, but did not retreat entirely. She watched the floor the way a captain watches open water, aware of every movement. I picked up the fork and took a small bite. It was simple, rich, not extravagant. I realized I could not remember the last time someone had handed me dessert without expecting something in return. "Good," Noah called. "Very," I answered, and meant it. Daniel leaned forward, lowering his voice. "You are setting an interesting precedent tonight." "Am I?" I asked. "You waited. You did not rearrange the room. That is new." I glanced toward Claire as she refilled a water glass for a table near the window. She laughed at something an older woman said, the sound unguarded. "Not everything requires rearranging," I replied. Daniel followed my gaze. "Careful," he murmured. "Women who do not bend tend to stand their ground." "That is the point," I said quietly. The server returned to take our orders. No special menu. No whispered upgrades. Just the regular selection printed on thick cream paper. I ordered the ribeye, medium, with roasted potatoes. Daniel ordered the same. The others followed suit. For once, the night felt balanced. The rain had slowed to a mist outside, leaving the streets slick and reflective under the streetlights. Claire approached again after placing our order. "Thank you for waiting," she said, addressing me directly. "Most people would not have." "Most people expect exceptions," I replied. "Do you?" The question was simple, but it held weight. I considered it carefully. I used to. She studied me for a moment, as if searching for sarcasm. Finding none, she nodded once. "Noah thinks birthdays are about who shows up, not what you buy," she said. "So I am glad you stayed." Showed up. The phrase settled somewhere deeper than the candle had. I watched Noah carefully cut a paper napkin into uneven shapes, concentrating as if it were the most important task in the world. "He is lucky," I said. "He has someone who keeps her word." Claire's expression softened again, but there was steel beneath it. "It is not luck," she replied. "It is work." The food arrived, steam rising in gentle waves. Conversation at our table shifted to neutral topics. Business that sounded harmless. Projects described in broad strokes. Daniel adapted easily, his tone light, his posture relaxed. The restaurant resumed its steady rhythm around us. Plates clinked. Laughter floated from the bar. For a moment, it felt like any other dinner in Manhattan. Halfway through the meal, Noah approached again, holding something behind his back. Claire followed, a cautious smile on her lips. "He insists," she said. Noah revealed a folded piece of construction paper, slightly crooked at the edges. On the front, In large, uneven letters, it read Happy Birthday Mr. E in green crayon. I stared at it longer than necessary. You did not know my name? I said gently. Mom told me, he answered proudly. I took the card carefully, as if it were fragile glass. Thank you, Noah. Claire watched my reaction closely, not measuring my power now, but something else entirely. The kind of man I chose to be in small moments. And for the first time in a long time, I found myself wanting to choose well. The card stayed in my hand long after Noah ran back to his booth, satisfied with his delivery. The green crayon had pressed hard enough to leave grooves in the paper, as if he wanted to make sure the message could not be erased. I set it carefully beside my plate, instead of slipping it into my pocket. Daniel noticed. He always notices. You were keeping that? He asked quietly. Yes, I said. No explanation. He leaned back in his chair, studying me the way he studies numbers before signing a contract. Interesting night for self-reflection, he murmured. Eat your dinner, I replied. The rest of the meal unfolded without incident. The ribeye was cooked exactly as requested, the roasted potatoes crisp on the outside and soft at the center. Conversation drifted to neutral territory again, projects framed in broad, harmless language. Across the room, Claire moved from table to table, steady and unhurried. She never hovered near ours, never tried to extract gratitude for the cake or the candle. She treated us like every other table, which in its own way felt more deliberate than special attention ever could. When we finished, I placed the napkin neatly beside the plate and stood. Daniel and the others followed. The check arrived in a slim black folder. I opened it, glanced at the total, and added a gratuity that reflected the service, not the spectacle. No dramatic gestures. No excessive display. Just fair. Claire approached as I signed. Was everything satisfactory? She asked. Professional. Composed. Yes, I answered. Thank you. She hesitated, then glanced at the card still resting near my plate. He does that for people he likes, she said. Then I am honored, I replied. For a second, the noise of the restaurant faded again. Not tense this time. Just quieter. I meant what I said earlier, she added. Rules matter. Especially when someone with influence walks through the door. Influence. She chose the word carefully. Not power. Not danger. Just influence. And what do you think I did tonight? I asked. She met my eyes without flinching. You respected the rule. A simple statement. No praise. No awe. Just observation. I nodded once. Good night, Claire. Good night, Mr. Blackwood. As we stepped toward the entrance, Noah called out again. Do not forget your wish. I paused, hand on the door handle. I will not, I said, though I had not made one in years. Outside, the air felt cooler than before. The rain reduced to a fine mist that clung to the pavement and turned the city into a mirror of blurred light. My driver opened the car door, but I did not get in immediately. Through the window, I could see Claire kneeling beside Noah, helping him pack up his crayons and paper. She brushed a strand of hair from his forehead and said something that made him laugh. Daniel joined me at the curb. You could have owned the room tonight, he said. Instead, you let a hostess dictate terms. She is not a hostess, I replied. She is a mother keeping her word. He studied me again, measuring the shift he could not yet define. And what does that make you? He asked. I looked back through the glass one last time, at the woman who had refused to bend, and the child who believed promises were sacred. Someone who was reconsidering the rules, I said quietly, then finally stepped into the car as the city lights stretched endlessly. Ahead, the car door closed with a muted thud, sealing me inside a quiet that felt heavier than the rain had earlier. The city moved past the window in long streaks of gold and white, traffic lights reflecting off wet pavement like distant stars. Daniel sat across from me in the back seat, watching without speaking. He knew better than to fill silence that was working something out. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out the folded construction paper Noah had given me. The edges were slightly bent now, but the green letters still pressed deep into the page. Happy birthday, Mr. E. I traced the indentations with my thumb, feeling the uneven pressure of a child who believed effort mattered more than perfection. You are unusually quiet, Daniel finally said. It was dinner, I replied. It was more than dinner. I did not argue. Instead, I looked out at the skyline. 36 years. In my world, birthdays are markers of survival, not celebration. People send gifts that cost more than most families make in a year. expensive watches, rare bottles of whiskey, invitations to private rooms where the music is loud enough to drown out memory. Tonight, I had a slice of chocolate cake and a paper card drawn in crayon. And somehow, that felt heavier than gold. My phone vibrated again. A message from one of my managers confirming tomorrow's meeting at 8 in the morning. Numbers. Contracts. Expansion. The machine never sleeps. I typed a brief confirmation and slipped the phone away. Turn around, I told the driver. Daniel looked up sharply. We have already left Midtown. I am aware. The car slowed, then signaled, merging carefully through traffic before circling back toward the restaurant. Daniel studied me openly now. You forgot something? He asked. I glanced at the card in my hand. Something like that. When we pulled up near the curb, the restaurant lights were dimmer than before. It was close to closing time. The rain had stopped completely, leaving the air cool and clean. I stepped out alone this time, leaving Daniel in the car. Through the window, I saw Claire wiping down a table while Noah sat half asleep in a booth, his head resting on his folded arms. She looked up when the door opened, surprise flashing across her face before she composed herself. We are closing, she said. Automatically, then recognized me fully. Did you forget something? Yes, I answered. I walked toward her, careful, deliberate, not imposing, just present. I forgot to say thank you properly. She studied me as if weighing whether this was another performance. You already tipped generously, she said. That is not what I mean. Her eyes softened slightly, but she did not lower her guard. Then what do you mean? I held up the card. No one has made me something by hand in a very long time. The admission felt strange leaving my mouth. Honest in a way that cost more than money. Claire glanced at Noah, then back at me. He likes making people feel included, she said quietly. Most people are too busy to notice. I noticed, I replied. Silence stretched between us, but it was not uncomfortable. It felt like the pause before something begins, not ends. Good night, Mr. Blackwood, she said finally, though her tone carried less distance than before. Good night, Claire, I answered. And when I stepped back into the cool night air, I realized that for the first time in years, I was not driving away from something. I was thinking about coming back. The next morning, the city felt sharper than usual, sunlight cutting clean lines across the glass towers outside my office. I had slept, but not deeply. The card was on my desk, unfolded, propped carefully against a crystal paperweight that had cost more than the dinner itself. Happy birthday, Mr. E. The green letters looked almost defiant against polished mahogany and floor-to-ceiling windows. Daniel walked in without knocking, as he always did. He paused when he saw it. You brought it to work, he observed. Yes. He set a folder in front of me. Contracts. Numbers. Expansion into another district that would triple our footprint within a year. I flipped it open, scanned the projections, the clean columns of profit and leverage. Everything made sense on paper. Everything always did. We have a luncheon at 1, Daniel continued. Councilman Harris will attend. Cancel it, I said. He blinked once. Cancel it. Reschedule. I closed the folder and pushed it aside. I have somewhere else to be. Daniel did not argue, but curiosity lingered in his expression. The restaurant, he asked. I did not answer directly. Instead, I picked up my phone and made a call to one of my property managers. I need the least details on Lawrence, I said. Yes. Today. There was a brief pause on the other end, then confirmation. I ended the call and looked back at the skyline. Power is usually loud. It demands attention. It rearranges rooms. But sometimes, it moves quietly, like a decision no one expects. By late afternoon, I was back in Midtown, not in a tailored suit meant to intimidate, but in something simpler. Dark jacket. Open collar. I left the car a block away and walked the rest of the distance. The restaurant was open, sunlight replacing last night's candlelight. Claire stood behind the host's stand reviewing a clipboard. Noah was not there. For a second, I felt something close to disappointment. She looked up as the door opened. Recognition flickered, followed by cautious surprise. We are not fully booked yet, she said lightly, though her eyes searched my face for intent. That is not why I am here, I replied. I stepped closer, careful to keep my tone steady. I made a few calls this morning. Her posture shifted, alert now. About your lease. Silence fell between us, thinner than last night's tension, but sharper. If this is about changing policy because you were inconvenienced, I am not interested, she said calmly. There it was again. The refusal to bend. I shook my head. Your lease is up in 6 months, I continued. The rent will increase. Substantially. She did not flinch, but I saw the calculation behind her eyes. Staff. Childcare. Bills. I am aware, she said. We are preparing. You should not have to prepare to survive, I said quietly. I can make sure the rent does not change. Her gaze hardened slightly. In exchange for what? A fair question. In my world, nothing comes without terms. I held her eyes deliberately. In exchange for nothing. Except that you keep your rules. She studied me for a long moment, measuring sincerity against experience. Why? She asked finally. I glanced around the room, at the empty tables waiting to be filled, at the sunlight touching polished wood. Because last night, you reminded me that influence can protect something instead of take from it. The words felt unfamiliar, but steady. Claire exhaled slowly. You cannot buy integrity, she said. I am not trying to, I replied. I am trying to respect it. Outside, traffic moved steadily down the avenue. Inside, a decision hovered between us, fragile but real. And for the first time, I was not offering control. I was offering support. Claire did not answer immediately. She stepped back from the host's stand and walked toward the window, sunlight catching in her hair as she folded her arms across her chest. Outside, Midtown moved with its usual rhythm, taxis sliding past storefronts, pedestrians weaving through crosswalks as if the world depended on their urgency. Inside, the restaurant felt suspended in a quieter space, like the moment before a verdict. You realize how this sounds, she said finally. A man with your reputation offering to adjust the future of this place. Her tone was not accusatory. It was careful. I nodded once. Yes. And you expect me to believe there are no strings attached. I expect you to question it, I replied. That is part of why I am here. She turned to face me fully now. I built this with the owner from the ground up, she said. Long hours. Fewer staff than we should have. Every review earned. I am not interested in being someone's project. The word lingered in the air between us. Project. Charity. Control. I understood all of it. I am not offering to own it, I said. I am offering to keep it stable. Why? She asked again, softer this time, but more pointed. I stepped closer, lowering my voice instinctively, not to intimidate, but to be heard clearly. Because you did not bend when it would have been easier. Because you protected something small and ordinary in a world that rarely stays ordinary. Because your son believes promises matter. Her expression shifted slightly at the mention of Noah, protective instinct layered over cautious hope. You cannot base business decisions on a child's drawing, she said. No, I agreed. But I can base personal decisions on what it represented. She studied my face as if searching for performance. I let the silence stretch, resisting the urge to fill it with assurances. I was used to convincing people quickly. This felt different. It required patience, not pressure. If I accept help, she said carefully, it will not be quiet. I will not pretend it came from nowhere. I will not owe you access to this place or to my life. You will owe me nothing, I replied. And if anyone asks, you can tell them the lease was renegotiated through proper channels. Which it will be. Her eyebrows lifted slightly. Proper channels? Legal ones, I clarified. Transparent. Documented. Clean. She walked back toward the host's stand, running her fingers lightly over the polished wood as if grounding herself. And what do you get out of it? I allowed myself a small, honest smile. A place where rules mean something. A place I can walk into without rearranging the room. That answer seemed to settle somewhere deeper than the others. She leaned against the counter, considering. You are asking me to trust you, she said. I am asking you to give me the chance to earn it, I replied. The door chimed as a pair of early dinner guests stepped inside, breaking the intensity of the moment. Claire straightened automatically, professional again, welcoming them with a measured smile. I stepped back, giving her space to work. Before I turned to leave, she looked at me once more. If you do this, she said quietly, you do it because it is right. Not because you expect gratitude. Understood, I answered. As I walked out into the late afternoon light, I realized something simple and unexpected. For the first time in years, I was not negotiating a deal. I was choosing a direction. 6 weeks passed before the paperwork was complete. 6 weeks of quiet calls, revised contracts, and signatures that never made headlines. I did not step back into the restaurant during that time. Not because I lost interest, but because I meant what I said. If I was going to earn trust, it would not be through constant presence. It would be through consistency. On a clear Thursday evening in early spring, I walked through the doors again. No entourage. No announcement. The place looked the same, but lighter somehow. The windows were open a few inches, letting in air that carried the faint scent of the city after rain. Claire stood behind the host's stand, reviewing reservations. When she looked up and saw me, she did not freeze this time. She simply held my gaze for a second longer than usual. "Table for one?" she asked, a hint of something softer in her voice. "If you have it." She glanced at the screen, though I suspected she already knew the answer. "We do." She led me to a small table near the window. Not the best in the house. Not hidden either. Just present. I sat, noticing the subtle details. New light fixtures. Fresh paint along the baseboards. The kind of improvements that only happen when someone believes a place will last. "The lease came through," she said quietly as she set down a glass of water. "The terms are fair. Transparent." "Good. You kept your word." It was not praise. It was acknowledgement. I nodded once. "You did not ask for anything," she continued. "No private room. No special menu. No events." "I told you," I said. "I only wanted the rules to stay intact." For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then Noah appeared from the back hallway, taller somehow, though that was probably imagination. He spotted me and broke into a grin. "Mr. E," he said, hurrying over. "You came back." "I said I might," I replied. He placed a folded paper on the table without ceremony. Another drawing. This one of a restaurant with 3 stick figures standing outside, one taller than the others. "That is you," he explained, pointing at the tallest figure. "But this time you are smiling." I looked at the drawing, then at Claire. She did not look away. "Thank you," I said, and meant more than the words carried. Dinner that night was simple, conversation easier. I learned that Noah liked math but hated spelling, that Claire had taken night classes in business management, that she had once wanted to open her own place but chose stability instead. I listened more than I spoke. When the check came, I paid it without spectacle. As I stood to leave, Claire walked me to the door. The city outside hummed with evening traffic, headlights stretching down the avenue in steady lines. "You know," she said, hands resting lightly on the door frame, "influence can do damage, but it can also build something steady." "I am learning that," I replied. She studied me, not as a man to fear, not as a man to impress, but as a man still deciding who he wanted to be. "Then keep learning," she said softly. I stepped into the night air, the door closing gently behind me. For years, I believed control was the same as strength, that owning the room meant winning. But sometimes strength is waiting. Sometimes winning is letting a promise stand. And sometimes the most powerful thing a man can do is choose not to rearrange the table, but to sit down and earn his place at it.